Hi everyone, welcome and join me today as I make a Halloween patchwork witch hat. Welcome to my little crafting corner of the internet. As I said, today we're making a witch hat, and I know this video will not come out before Halloween. Actually, the last stitches of the hat I did on Halloween itself, so I could wear it in the evening. Whatever, there is more than just one occasion every year to wear a witch hat, right? So let's get started. I started by ironing some fabric and cutting out some fabric squares, before realizing I should probably make a pattern first. It would have been smart to have at least a rough idea about how many squares I'd need. So after a little detour, I went back and started with making a pattern. Here I am measuring my head circumference to figure out how wide the base of the head needs to be. So we are going to ignore all of the chaos around me. It's crafting time, so that means it's chaos time. But I used my head measurements to make a paper pattern for the witch hat. So this is my brim. I think I'm very happy with how the size is. And then on top of that we have the cone, and I think I'm very happy with this. So I will continue cutting out and sewing together my little squares to actually make the fabric for the witch hat. This project involved a lot of just cutting out little squares. I started with a paper template that I traced on my fabric and cut out one by one with a pair of scissors. Luckily, I remembered at one point that I own a rotary cutter and a fancy sewing ruler, which made things much easier. Although, as you can see, I was still struggling a bit. I'm not sure if it's my rotary cutter or my cutting mat, but one of them definitely needs to be replaced soon. For this project, I decided to do a bit of stash busting and start using all these little fabric scraps that I keep hoarding when I finish a project. I've always loved a teal and pink or light blue and pink color combo. It reminds me of carnival and cotton candy. So that's the color scheme I went for with this hat. This hat involved a lot of ironing, cutting and sewing. Oh! And did I mention all the ironing, cutting and sewing involved in this project? By the way, this is how long everything actually takes if I do not speed up the clip by 400%. This all took a little bit longer than I expected. Well, that's the crafting process, I guess. But we finished. So the first part, this is gonna be the brim of the hat, and now I will continue with more sewing and cutting and ironing to get the actual cone part of the hat done. But because I am a nice person, I decided to spare you another endless montage of me cutting small fabric squares. So through the magic of editing, we're jumping ahead to lining our fabric with pieces of fleece. Just like in my last video, I'm using remnants from an old fleece blanket, perfect for repurposing. I'm sewing straight lines across the fabric to give the hat a quilted look. Once the brim was done, it was time to repeat the whole process for the cone. With both the brim and the cone finished, I could finally move on to the decorations. My amazing friends from the US recently brought me a pack of freezer paper, so I used it to make little bed stencils. Freezer paper is amazing for making stencils. One side has a waxy coating that can be ironed onto the fabric. Sadly, I haven't found a similar product in Germany. For that extra bit of sparkle, all the beds got pink eyes made from tiny beads. To make the brim stand up, like a proper witch hat should, I hand sewed some wire into the edge before adding the black lining. To attach the lining, I used the invisible zipper foot on my sewing machine, which lets me sew really close to the wire for a neat finish. I stitched the different head layers together at the center by hand. I might have been able to use the sewing machine, but there was no way I could fit all those layers of fabric and wire under it and make it look nice. For the lining of the cone, I used the same black fabric I used for the brim. And again I sewed it on by hand. I really used to hate hand sewing, but lately I've really started to enjoy this part of the creative process. It's actually quite relaxing if you have a good audiobook. I highly recommend the No Sleep podcast if you enjoy a spooky story. Since I made the head a little too small, yes, even though I carefully measured my head before starting, well, I added 2 ribbons so I can tie it under my chin. I am so sorry for the bad camera angle, but on Halloween day itself I attached the last pieces of decoration. This beautiful trim and off camera 2 small plastic skeleton hands. And that's it! The hat is finally done! Time for the big reveal!